I am Loriana, the Program Director with EA Principles. I'm going to be your moderator during this webinar. Welcome to our webinar series on cutting-edge collaboration platforms for digital transformation. Dr. Steve Else, the CEO and Chief Architect at EA Principles, will be introducing our featured guest and presenter, Christoph Bergner, owner of MID, an enterprise architecture and engineering modeling company, and product lead for Smartfacts. After his presentation, Christoph will tackle questions. As mentioned, please mute your microphones until the QA at the end. If any questions or concerns come up along the way, please write to me in the chat window. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to it will be made available to you and emailed later on. And now, Dr. Steve Else will go ahead and take it away.
Yes, hi everyone. This is Steve, and I'm very pleased to introduce Christoph Bergner. As Loriana indicated, he is the owner of MID, which is headquartered in Nuremberg, Germany, and has offices across Central Europe, especially in Germany and Switzerland. And very honored to have this opportunity to hear from him. Christoph was originally trained as a mechanical engineer and was a consultant, and then he's become a serial entrepreneur and in areas that have to do with transformation. So this is one of the key reasons I invited him to speak. And as I've explained some of the things that he's involved in, people were really very interested in seeing, in particular, Smartfacts. So in what we do in enterprise architecture and EA Principles, we're about better informed decisions faster, and not just across the enterprise, but across our ecosystem. And this is also Christoph's vision. He has EA modeling tools. He has collaboration tools such as Stackfield. His EA modeling tools innovator, and then the collaboration platform is Smartfacts. I would like to make one overarching comment that in one of my major themes in my graduate courses, I've taught over 50 graduate courses on enterprise architecture and systems engineering, is that if we can't handle the kid stuff, then what are we going to do, right? I call the kid stuff the knowledge, information, and data. And this is where Christoph's focus is. We have to really bring all that together, and from different roles across the enterprise. We don't want enterprise architecture or modeling just to become other silos in our efforts. So we want to integrate roles, we want to integrate knowledge, information, and data real time and in a way that's searchable and valuable, so that the modeling work we do is something that's perceived as essential value added. So the other thing on this is that Christoph gives great demos of the capability of this type of software and environment, the Smartfacts. And so we've appealed to folks who are systems engineers, enterprise architects, program managers, CXOs to see what's possible, because Smartfacts is in production in very large companies, and the demos are really quite persuasive about how it is possible for folks to work together collaboratively in the way I've just described. So with that, I'd like to welcome Christoph to take over and share some of his insights and capabilities of his environment with us. Thank you, Christoph.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I'd like to do a brief introduction on MID. What is our agenda? Where are we heading to, and what do we do? And then do a conceptual introduction to Smartfacts and show you a little bit what's the idea and the concept behind. And then I'd pretty soon step into the tool and just show you what we've done so far and how this idea works. And I'm very happy to have a discussion on that and see what your questions are. Just some brief words on MID. The company has been around in the space of modeling information for quite a while. It's over 30 years now, and we have a flagship tool that's been maintained for more than 25 years. Meanwhile, and that is a tool suite, an enterprise modeling suite called Innovator, and it handles different domains like business intelligence, big data, data warehouse, data modeling, the data modeling space, the business process management space, software architecture, and enterprise architecture. So we have quite some large customers, industry customers, as well as public sector that use Innovator to to drive innovation in those four domains. MID has about 140 employees. As Steve said, we have our headquarters in Nuremberg in Germany, but we have some more offices in Germany and in Switzerland. And yes, of course, we are interested to do steps in the US market. Okay, so as I said, Innovator, a comprehensive modeling tool suite, and I have just brought one screenshot of Innovator that shows how the different disciplines work together, and that has always been a very important idea to us. We want to bring disciplines together and help disciplines to work together better by providing them a platform that allows to bring their work onto one level and harmonize their work on one platform. And so Innovator handles all the different modeling notations you probably know, like Archimate for the enterprise architects, then all the stuff for the business analysts like BPMN, decision model and notation, mask flows, and all that kind of stuff. Then we have cover the notations for information architects, so data modeling, and of course all the UML and SysML, so software architecture and system architecture type of modeling notations. And as you can see, you're able to bring all these notations onto one diagram or one whiteboard, as we call it, and also manage dependencies between the different artifacts. So this has been a very important idea to us to bring disciplines together and allow them to work together against one model that's held in one central repository. But of course, for a small company like MID, that idea isn't always easy to sell because you have to convince everybody in the company. All the different disciplines have to move away from their tools and adopt to Innovator. So that's sometimes not an easy message to tell the client. And so that is why we said we have to step back and we have to think about why it shouldn't be required to harmonize tools and to migrate and to move onto one platform and one tool. There should be a way that it doesn't really play a role in which tool, in which format, in which notation you're working. It should be possible to pull all the information together on one web-based platform, easy to access. It should be as easy to use as you use Google today. And so we started to work on Smartfacts. So for working with Smartfacts, you don't need our modeling tool. You're invited to keep going with your tool of choice. But whenever it comes to a point where you say, my model, my information has reached maturity that I want to share it and I want to discuss and talk to others about it, then Smartfacts is a good platform to do that. And then we have another product called Toolbus. That's a selection or a compilation of about 70 adapters, reading and writing adapters that allow to read a model in a certain format, transform it, and write it in a different format. So whenever you have the requirement or the task to move, a model, for instance, a UML model from Enterprise Architect to Magic Draw, then Toolbus can be a good way to do that and transform a big and complex model from one format to the other. So you see, our DNA is really about structured information, about descriptive information, about modeling. And I think as the requirement of moving ahead really fast in digitization and digital transformation is so rigid and is so important to most of the companies now. This kind of information, this kind of very valuable information that is existent in almost any company, it becomes more and more important, and it becomes more and more important to draw more value out of this information. So yes, the Smartfacts concept. What was our idea behind it? And I have already introduced the core idea. So we all the disciplines and all the different players in your company have their agenda and their challenges, and usually they have the ideal and optimal tool to overcome their challenges. And so there is this huge variety of tools, and everybody's keeping a valuable view on the business in his kind of tool and in his repository, but the big picture becomes more and more difficult to capture as tools become more and more specialized and powerful to do certain things. So yes, how can we help to overcome that problem of tool variety? Whenever you step into a project, you usually have those questions: how do my requirements trace into design artifacts or into test cases? How can I deal with all the local versions in the different repositories? How can they be integrated under one global config management? And how can I apply governance and integrate the views of, for instance, OEMs and suppliers? And so number one goal is we want to bring down the hurdles of accessing relevant information. We want to make it very easy to work with any kind of information that's kept in any format. And on the other side, we want to make this information available in the really relevant work environments. I'm going to show you a platform we have built. Smartfacts is an app, is a web app you can work with, but maybe it's even more important that it's possible to use the Smartfacts information from the platforms you use in your companies, like Jira or Confluence or SharePoint or whatever kind of collaboration platform. And so the most important use cases we've addressed is number one, easy access. I've talked about that. Everybody should be able to access any model in any version in any environment. Then collaboration. We should be able to carry out discussions, reviews, chats in the context of model-based information. That's not really easy. Usually you start by doing a screenshot and you paste it into an email or into a chat. And so that's not our idea. It should be really a discussion around the content. Then we want to help link the data. So whatever you have in whatever format and tool, you should be able to draw traces and link the data. And when you're able to do that, of course, you want to do analysis on it. You want to understand impacts, traceability. You want to do a documentation across tools. So these are the four most important use cases we have been working on. Yes, we are kind of a hub and spoke system. So you maintain your information decentrally in whatever tool you like, and whenever you think you want to share it with others, you publish it to Smartfacts. Usually we have a little wizard for all those tools. So for instance, if you use Enterprise Architect from Sparks, then we have a wizard that allows to connect with Smartfacts, and with 3 or 4 steps, you publish your model to Smartfacts whenever you think it's the right time to share it. So we have the complete history of information in one place. Every version that gets published is historized, and we can access that version separately. We were able to do cross-model traceability and analysis, even multi-level, so even across multiple models. We have one identical UI for all tools and tool integration. So that means it doesn't really play a role if you have a class diagram in Enterprise Architect or in Power Designer or in Magic Draw or in Innovator. It's always the same way to access it, to navigate it, to drill down into the details. So there's nothing special to learn about tools. And yes, we can pull models together and do a global configuration management and baseline. So today we have focused, and that's basically our history, and what we really know well is metadata tools, metadata modeling tools. This is the first data source we have integrated. Right now, we're about to add live systems adapters, so you're able to pull SQL schemas into Smartfacts, or for instance, the metadata of Salesforce or of a part of the SAP instance you run. So that is interesting information that could also be shared via Smartfacts. And of course, it's nice to have everything in one place and to be able to search and so on. But I think it's extremely important that you're able then also to reference that information. So when you open a Jira ticket and say we have to do a certain change, you want to reference the business process that's influenced, or the class diagram that has to change, and so on. So we provide that kind of integration, so you're able to reference from Jira into Smartfacts, meaning into any kind of meta information. How do we bring the models into Smartfacts? Basically, I said it. You have a little wizard, and by using that wizard, you transform data into RDF, and we then import it into Smartfacts. We're doing delta uploads, so only the first version gets imported as a whole, and all the consecutive versions will be imported only as deltas. So we can deal very well with versions, and we can understand how a model has evolved and what are the differences that have been introduced over the last 4 weeks or so. So that is all very easy to achieve via Smartfacts. Traditionally, modeling tools are not very good in versioning, in branching, in merging, and we have, from the very beginning, we have focused very much on being able to work with versions. So the complete set of meta information that's in a model gets published. So whatever you have, the class, the attribute, the tag value, all relationships, everything we find in the model, we publish to Smartfacts. And I mean, there's a lot of metadata management tools around, but none of them really also captures the diagrams. So what we do is we transform the diagrams to SVG, so we can work with them very well. Those diagrams look very, very similar to the original. So you will probably recognize a class diagram from Enterprise Architect because it has its special color and so on, and you will also recognize that on Smartfacts. So the diagrams look very much like the original one, and we have a traceability or a connection between the graphics and the meta information. So you have the whole set of information you have built and maintained in the original tool also on the Smartfacts platform. So far, we have already added a set of modeling tools. Originally, we started with the business area of software innovation. So the first tools were ARIS, Enterprise Architect, Innovator, and Visio we had added, and over time we have added more and more tools, and we will continue to do so. So there are certainly important ones to come to be integrated over the next months. Magic Draw is a big one, and Rhapsody also. And over time, we were approached, or we felt there was a lot of demand from the systems engineering side, as model-based systems engineering is something that's very popular right now, and many large companies are doing steps towards that technique. So we got a lot of requests, and you will see in what we have implemented that some ideas come from systems engineering, but might very well be useful in other domains like enterprise architecture or data management. So this is basically what I wanted to tell as an introduction. And now I'd just ask: are there any questions you would like to ask right now before we step into the demo, or should I just start with showing you how Smartfacts works?
Christoph and Steve, a couple questions did come up along the way.
Okay.
One of them was about the various tools being used in the slide since they were not labeled. So I don't know if that's something you want to save for the end, or if you can go back to the slide where you had the icons there and just say what each of the tools is.
Okay. I can. Yes. I mean, yes, I think it is better to stick with the list, actually.
Okay.
As I said, we have these are the tools we have integrated today, and but we have those 70 adapters in our Toolbus product that help us very much to access original or native data repositories. And so it is, in many cases, it is not so difficult for us to add another tool. Right now, we have focused very much on functionality of the platform, but now for the next months, there's a number of tools that should be added. So this is what we have right now.
Okay, and the second question was by Janet, and she was asking, how about iServer by Orbis?
Yes, iServer. When I'm not very. I don't know the product very well. I'm aware that it uses Visio, I think, as one of the main formats. And I must say I'm not aware how iServer works with other formats so much. I know it primarily as a platform for Visio.
So Don had a question. So I don't know if you could see that in the chat area, Christoph, but his question says, when you list Irwin, does that include the new Irwin EA Suite after their acquisition of Casewise?
Right now, it is we are only supporting Irwin, but Casewise is a tool we support with Toolbus, and it might be added in the near future.
We have one more question. I don't know if you want to entertain just this last one and then move on, and we can save the rest of the questions till the end. Okay, so this last question for now. There isn't a Toolbus adapter for iServer or plans to add one, so this is the question.
Right now, there is no Toolbus adapter to iServer. No, but if that is an interesting case, we can discuss it. I would like to understand a bit more what the case is, and it might be interesting for us. We should discuss that.
Okay. Oh, and the last thing is just a comment. Somebody wants the demo to show the mode of access to Smartfacts.
Okay, good.
Okay, all right. Carry it away. Thank you.
Good. I just switched to the web app, to SmartFacts, and first of all, we have a window here that's pretty important for us. It's called the content selector. It's a core component of the platform, and it allows to access any content that's in the platform. And so, I would like to show you the various ways we have to access content. So, of course, I have a favorites tab where I can pin down all my favorites, favorite diagrams. I have a search tab where I can use a Google-like search to look at content. And if I search for anything, I get here 121,000 pages with 10 elements. So that shows we have about 1.2 million model elements in this instance. This is still a small instance. I'm aware that big companies will go in 50, 100 million model elements. The biggest request we had was about 400 million model elements in one instance. And so scalability is something that's very important for us. An important tab is the navigation. So search is one way, but of course, navigation is also important. So you can build a global model warehouse tree for your company by just adding folders, a folder structure, and importing models to those folders. And you see here, I have various models imported. There's some innovator models, enterprise architect. There is Rekiv, that's a requirements interchange format. So these are requirement packages. There is Irvin. So whatever you have seen on the chart, we can add those models to the tree. And as I said, we're always version aware. So for instance, this model is available in 4 different versions. And when I pick a version, I can drill down into the model tree. And that's exactly the model tree you would have in your original tool. So I can access the information not only via search, but also navigation. And of course, there is various ways to identify target content via analysis. So it could be a version diff or a suspect links view that's interesting for us to access content. It's always easy to find the position where am I in the global structure. Maybe I have searched, now I'm in the structure and I can examine the children and parents and so on, information that's around that piece of information I've just opened. What you see in the diagram are these little icons. Like here, we call them link icons, and they indicate, for instance, for this data source, that there is a link for this data source. And if I clicked the link icon, I get all the different pieces of information that are linked with this element. So I have an Irvin entity diagram that is linked to that data source, and I load that to the right side. And here I see see how that data source is linked to Irvin. And linking is very easy. We're doing it in a visual way. I just select one on the left side and I select it on the right side. Now SmartFacts asks, well, you have selected 2 elements. Do you want to define a link? And if I say yes, then the link gets established. Now I have an innovator BPMN diagram on the left and an Irvin entity relationship diagram on the right. And I could pull up another one, let's say an enterprise architect diagram to the right. And now I have enterprise architect on the right, and we can always switch via tabs between those diagrams. So it's really easy to pull all the content you're working in into your browser and then switch between the different views and scenarios. Okay, so traceability is something that is important to us, and I'm showing it right now here between different models and diagrams. But of course, there is other kinds of information. We might have a requirement structure, for instance. We might have textual requirements. So that is also possible that we have just a text. For instance, this text was edited in rational doors, and it was imported via Regev, the requirements interchange format. So we brought it into Smartfacts. So there is various ways to manage traceability between different kinds of information. As we more and more work with systems engineering, even CAD models might be interesting to pull on the screen and trace to. So that is something that's very specific to systems engineering, of course, but there is no limit to the kind of information we're dealing with. It might be Excel, it might be Word, whatever we want to link, we are able to build those links and maintain them. When we import a new requirement structure here, and let's say this requirement has changed here, then the link would get a different status. We would set the link to suspect, would get the status suspect, and it would appear in the suspect board. Somebody would have to work through all the suspect links and to identify if there's a change required, if that link is in fact valid or invalid. Okay, I'd like to show you another way how we work with information, and I'm just opening a block diagram here. And I'm opening the same diagram on both sides of the split view, and I have always switch via tabs between those diagrams. So it's really easy to pull all the content you're working in into your browser and then switch between the different views and scenarios. Okay, so traceability is something that is important to us, and I'm showing it right now here between different models and diagrams. But of course, there is other kinds of information. We might have a requirement structure, for instance. We might have textual requirements. So that is also possible that we have just a text. For instance, this text was edited in rational doors, and it was imported via Regev, the requirements interchange format. So we brought it into Smartfacts. So there is various ways to manage traceability between different kinds of information. As we more and more work with systems engineering, even CAD models might be interesting to pull on the screen and trace to. So that is something that's very specific to systems engineering, of course, but there is no limit to the kind of information we're dealing with. It might be Excel, it might be Word, whatever we want to link, we are able to build those links and maintain them. When we import a new requirement structure here, and let's say this requirement has changed here, then the link would get a different status. We would set the link to suspect, would get the status suspect, and it would appear in the suspect board. somebody would have to work through all the suspect links and to identify if there's a change required, if that link is in fact valid or invalid. Okay, I'd like to show you another way how we work with information, and I'm just opening a block diagram here. And I'm opening the same diagram on both sides of the split view. And I have a version 4 on the left side, and let's say I add a version 2 on the right side. And there are slight changes between those two versions, but I can't really identify them. And so what I can do is I can activate the compare mode and lock those two diagrams, and then I can zoom and pan those diagrams, correlating both zoom and pan factors, and examine where really the changes are. So I see something is got marked blue here, so there is a change. I don't really know what got changed. Something in the back, something in the properties of that port got changed. I see something in this green here that got added in the version 4, and in version 2 something is marked red, so that got deleted, and here is also a port in red that got deleted. So it's pretty easy to identify the differences between diagrams. So this shows we can really work with the information, with the metadata behind. Now I might be interested to really get down to the detail and see what happened here to that port. I don't really know what changed here. And if I select that one, I can also pull up the second version. So I have version 4 and version 2 here now. I have both sets of metadata in my floating container, and I see the highlight. So the description text of that port has changed in those two versions. And I have in the next step even the possibility to pull up a diff, a textual diff that shows me what was the version 4 and what is the version 2 and how do they differ. So there are a lot of ways how we can really deal with that information, and all we want to do is make it easy to work with that content. You shouldn't have to know a tool. The access should be easy as using Google. You want to be able to get answers from the models. You want to understand what are the changes we have made in over the last version. Does it affect my job? All those simple questions we want to provide answers to, and it should be very easy for the user to those functionalities. Okay, so maybe that should be enough as a demo for within Smartfacts. I told you about a different perspective. I think it is as important to be able to show information and models on the web and make it accessible. It is also very important to be able to use it from the platform you like and you use in your company. So what we have done, we're using OSLC to make the content we capture on Smartfacts publicly available. OSLC is a technology that's been around for a while, I think 8-9 years, something like that. It was invented by IBM, but meanwhile, it's set open source, and it's a very interesting concept in my eyes. The core idea is that the tools that participate in the OSLC initiative have so-called OSLC providers. And those OSLC providers allow to define stable links, and you may point from outside a repository to an artifact in a remote repository via a link, and you can tell the OSLC provider, please give me the data that's associated with this artifact. And the provider will give you an XML document, or it will provide a JSON structure, or it might also provide a delegated UI. So I get a complete HTML UI where the content is embedded, and maybe I have even the chance to edit the content and write it back into the repository. So that's an interesting concept, and we have made use of that in various platforms. I'm switching to Doors Next Generation. This is just an example for a platform. I'll also show you Jira. We are very advanced in Doors Next Generation, so I show this one, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever platform you use, it might be SharePoint or Confluence or whatever, you want to be able to reference into model artifacts. And so what I have here is a structure of requirements, and we have some links to our requirements. And if I hover over that link, I get the delegated UI of that piece of information. And you recognize it. We just had it. We just did the version comparison on it. And I just this is now provided by Smartfacts, but you consume it inside Doors Next Generation. So, and you can use zoom and pan. There is various functionality you can use. You might even be open to jump into the original tool from here. So it is very easy to access that information without having to leave the platform. Here, for instance, I have done a reference not onto a diagram, but onto a model element. So I have this model element. I have the list of properties of that model element. And when I click on the plus, I get the diagram where this element is embedded in, and I get colored the element in blue. That is, oops, no, I have to do that again. I get colored the element in blue that where that element is embedded in. So I see this is the one that I was referencing in that diagram. So, now I've shown you how I consume those models. Establishing or those links, establishing a link is also very easy. So I just have to log in first. Now I like to establish a new link, and I choose a certain link type, and then I get a delegated UI from Smartfacts, and you recognize it. This is our content selector. We can use favorite, search, navigate, analysis to identify content, and I will just use this one. That's our business process, and I say add link, and so this is the way how we can build a reference to a model artifact. And whenever I hover over it, I will get the delegated UI of that diagram, of course. So this is how we've done it in Doors Next Generation. And here I have a Jira task, and it is the same thing. Here I have various references into various tools, like here, this is a delegated UI from Doors Next Generation. I say we have an important change in the following two requirements. I have references to those requirements. I have references to model artifacts that are provided by Smartfacts. So wherever you are, we want to provide a way to work with models in a very easy way, and to just reference them in order to use the precision and the value of that information, yes, to come to a more efficient way of managing innovation. Okay, I think we're now in it's 47, so we have another 13 minutes. There's still a lot to show. We have integrated Smartfacts into the modeling tools. Here I'm now in Enterprise Architect, and I can also access my model warehouse from within Enterprise Architect. I can call up the model warehouse tree. So I get that global model warehouse tree here. And for instance, I can pull up, drill into models independent of tools. So even within Enterprise Architect, I can look at Power Designer diagrams. I can open requirement packages. So there's various ways to work with that. And this is another important area we focus on. We really want to integrate the functionality and the richness of Smartfacts into the tools that the modelers are using, so they can easily see how their model links into other models in other tools. The whole platform of Smartfacts is open. We have built the web application I have just shown you on a REST layer. So there is a large set of REST functionality. It's about 250 REST functions, and all of those functions we are using to provide the platform, the web app, we have also published. So you could easily write your own Smartfacts or use it to write a little plugin in your tool or whatever. So the whole platform is open and can be extended by yourself. Okay, I think that should be enough for the demo. I'm sure you have some questions, and I'm happy to take them.
Okay, Christoph, I'll start with the few questions, comments that have come through, but for everybody listening, you can unmute your microphone as long as it's orderly if you want to verbalize or vocalize your question instead of writing it in chat. So I'll start here with a couple of comments from Dr. Steve Els. He wrote how to work with SharePoint or Confluence, and then how to migrate off of another tool in the Smartfacts environment.
Working with Confluence or SharePoint would be very much like working with Jira. So you would use, for instance, Confluence to build a team website and maintain content there, but you would also like to reference into certain aspects that are kept in Smartfacts, and so you would use the delegated UI, the delegated search and select UI, so our content selector, to identify content, to build a link and integrate it into your website, into your team website, and that would work the same way in SharePoint as in Confluence.
Okay, and then I have a couple of questions from Kola. I'll start with the first one. So Kola asks, could Smartfacts override unauthorized changes? And I think there's a typo here, but it says which were hidden as done in black chaining.
No, Smartfacts cannot really override content in a model. So the original information is kept in your modeling tool, in your repository, in the original form. Whenever you think you want to share it, you can do that easily, and then it is easy to reference to it from anywhere. We're thinking of building that reference capability into Outlook, for instance, so you don't have to do screenshots, but really reference into a diagram and be able to zoom and pan inside Outlook and so on. But there's no way Smartfacts can overwrite the original information. We have snapshots, and we can compile them to baselines. I would like to show you that how that looks like. So if I call up a baseline, I can compile multiple models. Like I have an enterprise architect model, a Regev package, and an innovator model, and I have 3 timelines for them, and I can just define by clicking, selecting those snapshots, I can define a baseline. But so I can compile those models for instance, as a basis for documentation, because I need to know which version of those three models have to be brought together to do the documentation. But I'm not able to overwrite original information. That has always to be done in the original tool.
Okay, and another question from Kola. Will Smartfacts enable or maintain existing relationships amongst models? For example, BPMN and Irwin Model Manager.
The information itself is stored in Smartfacts because Smartfacts is the only instance to know about both elements you are connecting. But we can, by introducing a plugin like we have done for Enterprise Architect here, we are able to provide that details inside a tool. So when I open a diagram in Enterprise Architect, let's see, take one of these software diagrams here. I open the diagram and I get information. I didn't do anything with a plugin right now, but the plugin tells me, well, you have opened that diagram. I know 6 revisions of that diagram. There's a conversation going on. You might want to have a look what people are discussing about in the context of that diagram. And there are 10 links, cross-model links associated with this diagram, and one is an OSLC link. And so there is we provide that information inside those tools. So currently we don't in Irwin, but that might be the case in the future. We are able to provide that link information inside the tools, but it's not stored inside the tools.
Are there any other questions at this time? You can feel free to write them in chat, or again, you can unmute your microphone if we can take questions one by one, if people want to speak them into the microphone.
Oh, Christoph, this is Steve. Just wanted to give you the chance to kind of summarize your vision for Smartfacts. It clearly has a lot of functionality. It brings this integration across multiple tools, etc. But I don't think you've had the chance to explain what ultimately is your vision, like a year or 2, 3 years from now for Smartfacts, in terms of its place in the marketplace and so forth.
Yes, I mean, we of course we want to make it to the publishing platform. We really work very hard to be the best one to publish model-based information. So that is a role we like to play, and we're approached right now by many vendors because they say, well, publishing is something we need to care about, but we don't really want to invest there. We have other things that are important to us. So yes, there might be partnerships with modeling tool vendors in the future. So far, we have done everything on our own, but basically, right now we have built a platform that provides a generic value. I see various domains that have maybe some different requirements. There's the data domain where data governance is an interesting space. There's enterprise architecture, where we often have a huge gap between the enterprise architect's view that comes from those systems like Alphabet, or where companies maintain an Archimate enterprise architecture model, and we don't have traceability into the reality. Smartfacts can very well be a platform that plays that role, and it acts as a bridge between enterprise architect's view and the solution architect's view. There's the space of business process management, where we usually want to know how do business processes depend on data and so on. So that can and of course there's the systems engineering part where we are developing a lot of specific functionality right now, and especially do a very intensive project with IBM to bring Smartfacts into the jazz world. But so there is various domains where Smartfacts could play a role, and we will have multiple teams to focus on these different domains to provide more specific functionality.
Well, thank you very much, Christoph, for that. That's very interesting across the different disciplines and the like. One of the things that I talk about a lot in my training and in my education and consulting is the need for architects to actually step up to the plate, to raise our game to where we're perceived as essential value added for the discussion of digital transformation. So I challenge people on a scale of 1 to 5, to what degree are you the master of your architecture landscape? And many people are puzzled, like, what do you mean by master of the architecture landscape? So again, where are you at now? You're looking at data, apps, technology, and so forth, and where do you want to be? And it's really got a lot of people thinking. And I think your tool, what you've demonstrated today, it really helps with the impact analysis, the what-if analysis, the traceability analysis, again, in a very user-friendly way. And that's what's needed so we can up our game, right, for architects, working with engineers, working with program managers, working with decision makers, to real time say, let's look at the issue here, let's discuss this issue, and what's the impact of it, and let's drill down to the requirements and so forth. So I think it's really been very substantive, and I hope people can take away from a lot of the demo that you've generously shared with us. Now, if somebody has a tool environment that's like become obsolete or something, want to get the material out, is Smartfacts a platform then to help you kind of move to a more open, not so proprietary, maybe archaic environment that you had with an earlier tool? What's the opportunity perhaps to use the tool bus part of Smartfacts if somebody wanted to move off of a highly proprietary platform that wasn't sustainable in the way it was, and they wanted to move into a next generation type of environment? Is Smartfacts a way to help facilitate that?
Yes, I mean, I always see two ways. Number one would be coexistence. That would be the Smartfacts way. So if you want to work in a coexistence scenario with a lot of different tools, then Smartfacts is a very good way to do that. The other option is to migrate and say, I don't want, or I want to reduce tool variety, and I want to move off from one brand to another one. And then Toolbus is a very good technology. It was developed over 30 years. There's a lot of re-engineering knowledge in there, how those different repositories work, and it's a proven technology that works also with very large and very complex models. And we have a very good track record of especially migrating huge loads of models from one format to the other. Mostly clients are just using it once to move from one brand to another. But there is also scenarios where companies migrate their model every other night to be able to access the information also from a different tool.
Christoph, thank you so very much for your great insights. This is a very exciting environment here where we can pull together this knowledge, information, and data for innovation in a data value at scale type of environment. So greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
So if there are questions, just send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, we'll pass your information so that people can do that, Chris.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Thank you, Loriana, for hosting.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.